Welcome back, Chelsea fans, to another episode of the London is Blue podcast, your home for all things Chelsea FC. Nick, Dan, and myself cover all the match reviews from the latest Chelsea matches. We cover the team news and even throw you some exclusive interviews. Thank you already for being an awesome listener. And you know what? Let's jump right in.
Welcome back, Chelsea fans, to the London is Blue podcast. That's right. No Brandon today. Dan here, back from a couple weeks away out of the country. Brandon's not feeling too well, a little under the weather, so he was sitting out just like Pedro today. But you know what? We got a deep bench. No Danny Drinkwater to pull from, but Nick and Mike F. are both here with us today. Nick, how you feeling after that wonderful Wendy's tweet about Scott Frost and your Nebraska Huskers?
Oh, man. Yeah, the problem is, so I'm in Kansas City, and VML is in Kansas City, and they run the Wendy's account, so I know 3 of the people who might have tweeted that, and it just kind of made me that much more upset than I would have been otherwise. So that was cool. Really down sports weekend for your boy over here. Just didn't have a good one, Mike. It was a little brutal.
Yeah, I mean, minus a poor performance, I had a pretty good weekend. Took the ferry out to the Olympic Peninsula, saw some beautiful mountains and the water, and woke up really, really early and struggled to stay awake for the 5:30 a.m. match on the West Coast. But yeah, not as bad of a weekend as you, Nick. No,
and Brandon's feeling, I think, Dan, it's the post-Oktoberfest blues, where one stomach probably isn't performing on all cylinders.
That doesn't actually sound like it could be possible, Nick. It's not even October yet. It is clearly September, according to my calendar.
Well, it gets so damn cold in Minnesota, they have to do it early. It's a whole thing.
All right, well, before this turns into a lifestyle podcast, we are here to talk about Chelsea. We are here to talk about the draw versus West Ham, but we do have another this season first-time guest joining us. We have Mike Ryan from the Dan Le Batard Show joining us. Mike, welcome to the podcast.
It's an honor to be here. I listen every week, so this is a real thrill for me.
Well, we'd love to give you a moment to tell the fans a little bit about how you became involved with rooting for Chelsea, and to maybe take 1 or 2 moments to talk about how maybe you now have a split love between your wife and Baker Mayfield.
Well, I became a Chelsea fan during Mourinho's first stint. And I know that kind of seems a little bit like a glory hunter situation, but back then, Premier League teams weren't all readily available on multi-platform devices as they are now. Now one can say you're a Cardiff fan and actually watch Cardiff every week. Back then, you sort of had to choose one of the elite squads if you wanted to be able to watch your team on a regular basis. And I became a fan primarily because of Didier Drogba. My dog is named Roma. I was a Roma fan sort of at first because of Francesco Totti. And sort of the way that I fell in love with Totti and supported his club team, that's sort of how it went for Drogba. And then Chelsea was just on American television so often that they sort of supplanted Roma as my number 1 team, and I've been diehard ever since. Love the Blues, and yes, I'm right now trying to reconcile who I love more. My wife or Baker Mayfield, and she's not gonna like the answer.
Well, that's okay. She probably will not be a listener of the podcast, and if so, we will find a way to block it from her, ability to subscribe or something. We'll make sure that this doesn't hit her ears. All right. Well, Nick, we want to move through what we got going on today, but before that, we did get a couple of iTunes reviews that we want to throw some shout outs for leaving some 5-star love across the Apple Podcast world.
Correct, Dan. Correct. We got Wowski420, which, anytime there's a 420 in your name, I just assume. Jimbrowski, 1234, and Van Gelder, all with the 5-star love. Dan, what would someone do if they wanted to perhaps get featured on the show next week?
Well, all they need to do is to head to the Apple Podcast platform in their country, drop a little 5-star review, and we'll give them a shout out. It's not that hard. We don't have any new Patreon individuals to shout out, Mike, but I think you've been working on a couple of designs, mock-up things that might be dropping through that, and you might want to give a little tease, peek behind the veil of why people might want to kind of look there very shortly.
Yeah, we have some swag coming out for our Patreons. Maybe T-shirts, maybe something else a little bit special, maybe a coffee mug or two, and a few other things. Definitely, good things to have while you're watching the Chelsea on a Saturday or Sunday morning.
Excellent.
You're a tease is what you are, Mike.
All right. Well, one more thing we want to talk about before we hit the match review and talk about how we managed to stay awake this morning watching Chelsea play is the London trip that we're taking, Nick. We are going back. We're going back with our friends XL Tours. It is a post-Christmas/New Year's trip that we're taking to see Crystal Palace in Southampton, and it's going to be a great time.
It's the London is Blue festive series spectacular extra cool trip that we're taking. Official title of our trip. And so, yeah, really just wanted to continue to shout this out. We probably will for a couple more weeks just to make sure everyone hears that we're doing this. So if you go look at our website on the homepage, there'll be a link to it, but it's LondonIsBluePodcast.com/London trip is the actual URL. All the information that you would ever need and some really cool video that we shot the last time we were in London is featured on the page. It includes a link to go register through the XL Tour site, which is what you have to do to be officially registered. Basically, you want to come on this because it will be a riot. We have a lot of fun. We have a lot of beers. We're going over New Year's, so I think it'll be a little extra special. I think everyone might be turned up to 11 the entire trip, which will be great. But what does this include? It includes your hotel for the entire time. It includes your match tickets, which, if you don't know, are very hard to get. So it's nice to have a guaranteed match ticket for Crystal Palace away on the 29th and Southampton home on New Year's Day, which will be really fun and interesting time as well. And then it's New Year's in London. It's one of the best cities to be in for New Year's Eve, so we'll probably be raging pretty hard on New Year's Eve. Any special requests that you have, any questions you have, DM us, email us, which is contact@LondonIsBluePodcast.com, and we will make sure to either answer your question or route it to XL Tour so they can answer your question. If you need special requests on anything, this is the way to go. So do it. Sign up. Let's have a nice group of like 20, 25 people, and let's go take over London for a weekend, huh?
Well, Nick, it will certainly not be the blue Christmas that people talk about being a bad thing. It is a blues Christmas that we are looking to have with some people. And beyond that, we have a match review to discuss. We played West Ham away in the Premier League just this Sunday at the wonderful London Stadium. Bubbles were everywhere, and it was a pretty 0-0 affair. It was a 0-0 draw, and there were no correct score predictions, but as Brandon, who did have a little influence on this script, pointed out that Mavic_John on Instagram said, I know this is going to sound ridiculous, but 8-0. And we were very far off from a 8-0 match this game. But I know, Mike, typically I would run through the lineup, but since we are absent of Brandon, why don't you throw a little effort out there and run us through what we had going on?
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, hey, sounds good. All right, so in goal, once again, we have the indomitable Kepa. The back four stayed the same with Rudiger and Luiz at center back, and you had Dave and Alonso wide. And then midfield, once again, stays the same. It's our trio of Matteo, Conte, and Jorginho. And then, once again, up front, we've got Willian because Pedro was on the bench. You had Giroud getting the start over Morata, and we had, as well, the one and only Eden Hazard.
And we had three substitutes there, too. Gary Cahill comes in for Rudiger due to injury. Alvaro Morata comes in for Giroud, and then Ross Barkley makes the final substitutes appearance. And you were looking for youth on the bench, it was not there. Zappacosta, Moses, Willie C., and Cesc Fabregas rounded out the lineup. A couple quick stats would be that Chelsea, even a 0-0 draw, can manage 72% possession, 6 shots on target out of 17 total shots, almost 1,000 touches of the ball, 932, 757 passes in total. But again, as we go typically to our talking points, goals, as Brandon put in here, LOL, because there were none, we will move straight on to questions and discuss movement in the final third, which was probably one of the biggest points of contention. And a little bit of post-match press conference, highlighted one thing that was very absent today, which was the off-the-ball movement of Pedro. He did mention that he is the best player the team has with movement without the ball. And, I think, Mike Ryan, as we saw this match today unfold, how did you feel as you were watching that last final third movement? Did you see that kind of missing, especially with the fact that we had both Willian and Hazard on the flanks, who both love to work with the ball at their feet and are less, kind of optimal when when they're without the ball?
Yeah, this was absolutely a game to me that desperately needed Pedro. It was a little bizarre watching how West Ham approached Willian, because I felt like he had a lot of space, and anytime he had the ball, he seemed unmarked, and West Ham would just sort of wait it out until he crossed nobody over, and just waited for someone to meet up with him. I was bummed that Pedro couldn't go, but I think you can understand that on the short rest, the delay that happened over in Greece, and that was a really nasty collision that he had. All in all, still had enough opportunities to win the game. I think the bigger concern really is why Eden Hazard looked like he played a full 90 in Greece despite not even making the trip.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Ryan, that was kind of the big takeaway that I had, is not that Hazard played bad today, because I don't think he did necessarily. It just didn't look energized. It didn't look like there was maybe as much sharpness as we saw his ridiculous performance against Cardiff. To me he looked exactly like you said, like he had played the full 90 in Greece, and Willian clearly was leggy as well. It made me wonder, of all the days, just kind of understanding, Maurizio Sarri and the way that he forms his team, why someone like Moses or why someone like Callum Hudson-Odoi wasn't brought in to add some legs, add some enthusiasm, maybe try something different, because, after the first half, the movement in the final third ended up being just standing around. There were multiple opportunities where the ball was brought down either wing, and the most dangerous person the entire match until he got subbed was Kovacic, who was able to kind of carry the ball and create something and give Eden a little bit of room. But there didn't seem to me to be any sort of cut and thrust. There didn't seem to be any runs being made off other runs. It just looked like, Willian makes his run, as you adequately said, crosses nobody up, and then puts in a terrible cross or plays the ball back and it goes around the horn again. I mean, it was just very, very frustrating to watch. And look, I realize that, Mike, that these are professional players, and West Ham put 9 behind the ball again. Like, I realize that it's going to be frustrating, but it just didn't have anything, real to offer. And I think you could make the really strong case that West Ham had the better chances to score and probably could have won on a different day.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, it easily could have been 2-0 West Ham. I think we were let down by tactics. This was definitely shades of the Newcastle match, in which, we allowed a team to almost play a flat 9 at times, but we stayed so compact and tried to pass through the middle. And for me, I felt like until the 70th minute, you really didn't see Dave bombing down the wings and overlapping. I almost feel like he was told by Sarri to hold back as we were worried about getting maybe caught on the counter. And I think that really kept, as we brought that ball up on the left or through the center, it really allowed the defense to cheat over. And even when Willian got the ball on the wings, Dave wasn't there to overlap, to then whip in across. So I think we were let down by the lessons that we learned against Newcastle and just didn't implement them this week as we have in the past few.
Well, Mike, as you mentioned the crosses, I just think back to the fact that when you looked at, some of the individuals we had in the box today, we didn't necessarily equip ourselves with the best individual to be, height-wise, claiming a cross off of it. We had N'Golo Kante potentially had 2 chances off headers to score, which is a little ludicrous there. Giroud did get 1 or 2 targets in there. Jorginho had a nice little ball over the top, just a tad missed time that could have been potentially converted into a goal. So I don't know if I fully agree, Nick, that we potentially, that West Ham had the better opportunities to win. I think actually on expected goals, we had 2. West Ham had an expected goal of like 0.93. So the stats would tell you, as I love them, we should have won the game in every category. But ultimately, you can have all the passes in the world, you can have all the touches, but if you don't score a goal, then you walk away with a draw and 2 drop points, which again, I think at 16 out of 18 points to start the season, we all would have taken that. It just is unfortunate after a run of 6 games across all competitions winning to now go to this 7th game all comps and now have a draw against a London rival. Just kind of has a little bit of a deflating feeling to it that at the beginning of the season, if we had offered it to someone, you would have taken it 100% of the time. You would have given up, like something of value for it.
Yeah, and so 2 things. Being one, that yes, the mass overreaction by Chelsea Twitter today was absolutely ridiculous. I know it was a frustrating game, guys. I know this wasn't like the most fun thing in the world to watch and get up for at 7:30 or 5:30 in the morning. But man, like 16 of 18 points, can we figure it out? Can we as a group figure it out and be okay, like take our lessons and put them in and be okay with that? Second thing being, and Mike Ryan, I want to get your perspective on this. I think our strikers are really struggling with movement in the final third for various reasons. One being that the service coming from wide is not super right now, to say the least. And then 2, I think that they're struggling because both Morata and Giroud are both leaders of the line, that they are so far forward that the window of space that they have to really do anything with the ball, if it's coming directly from the heart of midfield or from out wide, is very small. And I think that Giroud last week saw a lot more joy out of playing a little bit further back, waiting for more of his runs to come. And even this week saw a couple over the top balls that he got a run onto. So do you think that the spacing is a part of the issue, or do you think that it's just a lack of technical ability with the runs?
I thought today was actually a little bit more about the runs. It's hard for me to sort of extrapolate exactly what the issue is with the crosses. I sort of want to answer your question with the question as to why I notice Dave's crosses to Morata, but whenever Morata is not in, he doesn't have that same sort of chemistry, and that sort of aspect of the game seems to go away. All in all, maybe look, the book on Sarri, from listening to podcasts such as yourselves, was that Sarri's rotation, especially when you get into European fixtures, leaves something to be desired in terms of getting fresh legs in there. I understand the strategy of maybe the game in Greece was probably the most difficult in terms of this group stage of Europa League, and he wanted to go in there and secure 3 points, and then maybe later we'll see a little bit more rotation. But I saw a team that looked a little tired, a little dead-legged. You understand the travel issues that they had in Greece, but I'm still not sure where that excuses players like Eden Hazard ultimately.
Yeah, so thinking about that part, Mike, and maybe we could just kind of pin on this. Where do you feel like Eden's struggles came in this game? As I was kind of watching, he definitely was getting the 2-3 player treatment. He definitely probably wasn't feeling the love when he gets taken down right in front of Mike Dean, a few feet outside the box, and nothing happens. it just seemed like he was a little, just not as sharp as we've seen him this season or seen him for Belgium this past couple months. It wasn't the selfish Eden of the Cardiff City match.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I I think of Michael Jordan when I look at Eden sometimes, and it's, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take, and he has to learn to just fire away. Sometimes, let Giroud and some of the other guys clean up some of your shots and rebounds. I definitely think that I was worried within the first, 5-10 minutes in which he had given the ball away 2 or 3 times, pretty sloppy, and it just felt like he wasn't there to really ball. And I think that's that one little aspect of his game that separates him from being that elite, 1-2 players in the world, because he just has off games, and I don't know. I mean, having played growing up my whole life, everybody has an off game. Teams have an off game. We tend to have some hoodoo with West Ham because, no matter, if they're in the bottom 3, they always get up for these games, and we just don't seem to, at least today, we weren't ready for it.
All right. So another key conversation point, and, we did, after having Gary Hayes on, talked a little bit about N'Golo Kante in that episode. We talked a little bit about N'Golo Kante today, our striker / midfielder / energizer bunny. Definitely had a lot to do in the attacking midfield role. And Nick, I feel like you are ready to sound off on your boy, N'Golo Kante.
Yeah, and guys, this was the most frustrating part of the whole day. As referenced in question 1, I think N'Golo probably had 2 or 3 chances that he could have put away for the team today, and he didn't. Right? I think everyone can look at the game he played and realize that he struggled mightily in the final third. And I think just with his spacing overall, he did not have a great game. I am not telling you that he had a great game. All I'm saying is for the thousands of haters, including you, Ryan Beck, who we went back and forth on Twitter, so it's all good. But I'm just, I want to call this out. To jump on him and I've saw the range of emotions go from should never play in the midfield again to maybe he had an off game. So it was a wide range of emotions. Look, guys. Just like the team, can we give this man a chance to try and figure it out, or are we just going to write off one of the best midfielders in the world because he's not a natural goal scorer? I think through the end of this, probably end of October, I would say, if he doesn't figure it out by then, or he's still having, maybe what I would consider a negative impact in the final third, then maybe you try and figure out a different way to play him, or the formation changes, or he doesn't play as much. Like there are multiple different scenarios here that I can see happening. But man, for the last 2 years, nobody in their right mind would have ever taken him out of the midfield because he was doing such important work. Now he's the guy that is ruining the game for us and is the reason we're losing. And all I would say to that, and I'll pass to Mike Ryan here, is Eden Hazard should be the guy, Willian should be the guy, Giroud should be the guy, Alvaro Morata should be the guy to score those goals that they had chances to score. And Morata got really unlucky today, to be fair. He hit our boy in the face, which didn't seem very friendly. But all I'm saying is give him a chance. Give him a chance and let the other guys do what they do best and score the goals. Like, all I want to see N'Golo do in this, high pressing scenario, Mike Ryan, is to win the ball up high and give the rest of our really talented attackers who are paid millions of pounds a year to score the ball to do just that. That's all I want.
I completely agree with that take. It's accurate, and also, it does really feel like we're saying Morata got unlucky after every game. He has this weird innate ability to make us say that after every game. I think he leads the world in almost goals. But to your point about Kante, N'Golo Kante is N'Golo Kante. He's never been this tremendous goal scorer. To point at him for what happened today is fairly ludicrous when that's really never been his job. I think I'd hope that Chelsea Twitter and the vocal part of the fan base that I understand why they're frustrated dropping points at West Ham. But I'd like to hope they took a lesson from what's happened with Marcos Alonso. Give Sarri and world-class players an opportunity to figure something out. It's still relatively early, especially for these players that have been in World Cup rosters, especially the ones that made deep runs. Trust the quality of an N'Golo Kante. Yeah, he missed certain opportunities, but so did people that you pay to actually score the goals. To single him out, when I still thought he did some fairly good things on the defensive end, and we don't really see him erasing players with the same sort of regularity in this system, and more is being put on his plate. I would sort of defer to the manager and trusting a world-class player to figure it out. I'm sort of happy that he has had the opportunities that he's had in this early going. I think we're all sort of surprised by that, even though we expected it in the system. I just always assumed that Kovacic would be the person that would be getting more of the opportunities, and today was a sort of weird game where it sort of dictated that he got the opportunities. But ultimately, I trust the manager to figure it out.
Yeah, I got to say, I think this would be a much different conversation had, Conte nicked one or two of those goals. I mean, I almost applaud Sarri for his almost like Philly-esque or Philly special-esque play where you've got Giroud in the box and it's we're targeting the little guy. Different day, we could be talking about N'Golo Kante hat trick. So I agree. I think unfortunately he's getting scapegoated for, I think, the lack of offensive production we're seeing from the entire midfield. We need one of those three guys to knock in the ball. We need them to pick up a goal every other match or something like that. And I think what hurts us from what I'm watching is that, was Barkley the first midfielder to actually take a shot today outside of the couple chances that Conte had? So I would love to see, Kovacic and Jorginho take one or two opportunities a match to try and, work some magic. And, I got to agree with you, Nick. I'm tired of the, social media going nuts. I mean, we kind of had a taste of it with people going, kind of apeshit over a 1-0 win in the Europa League, and now we God help that we get a 0-0 draw. We haven't lost a game in 6 matches in the Premier League with a brand new manager who had barely any time and not many incoming transfers. So I think people need to check their expectations and realize that this match is what we could have very, very easily been looking at the last 5 matches. And we were able to work that magic to get it done. And we were pretty darn close today. So, stop worrying about Liverpool and, just realize that the team needs time for the system.
Really quick, Mike. For those who want N'Golo to be on the bench for our next couple of games, do you realize who we're playing? Like, do you realize we're playing Liverpool and we need every ounce of N'Golo Kante at his defensive finest to even have a fighting chance in that game? Jurgen Klopp's had this team rolling for 3 seasons now, and they've picked up really good additions, and Liverpool's just a really good team, guys, like they are. And to take out N'Golo Kante now because he missed a couple of chances and instead not focus on what he's bringing to the table in other areas, I think would be incredibly short-sighted. And Dan, I think that sets us up for failure playing teams that are a lot more dynamic offensively than West Ham.
Yeah, I think here's probably the biggest challenge that we've had is, we still haven't figured out a way to be consistent in dealing with teams that defend with two banks of 4 stacked directly on top of each other. So, 8-man defenses plus a keeper, and then you have, maybe it's a 9-man defense, maybe it's 10-man defense. We did see like Antonio kind of with some forward movement. Felipe Anderson had some forward movement for West Ham today. So they were definitely trying to play the counter and, had some success with that, at least moving the ball forward a couple times. But, ultimately, like, N'Golo Kante is a great player. Did he have his best game in a Chelsea shirt today? No. So I think that the challenge is figuring out, to the point that Mike Ryan made, is how does Sarri find a way to balance this midfield trio, which does not have a natural goal scorer, which when you look at, what other clubs are doing, whether it be Liverpool, whether it be City, goals have to come from the attackers, but they also have to come from the midfield if we're going to look at challenging across multiple competitions. Because there are days like today where Eden Hazard isn't at his best, Giroud is struggling a little bit, Willian is a little leggy after doing the full kind of treading out there when it comes to the Europa League match and playing his heart out there. You're going to need someone else to come up with a goal, and it would be nice for N'Golo Kante to be one of those people. It would be nice for Kovacic to be one of those people. It'd be great if Jorginho chipped one in as well, but that's not their makeup. And so if that's going to be the case, then it might be a personnel change at some point in the future. Again, I don't think Mason Mount is ready yet, much to the kind of sadness that some people might hear, but he is developing, and that's what you're going to want to see eventually in the future, is him with two other midfielders like Jorginho and someone else that can really give this midfield some flexibility, and someone who's going to bring a ball forward. You're like, oh, this guy can score, and that's going to potentially relieve a little bit of the pressure off some of our attackers, Nick.
Yeah, and I think too, I'm not making a bunch of excuses for N'Golo here. I said up front, he did not have his best game in a Chelsea shirt, and I will concede that point to all who are angrily tweeting at me as they're listening to this. The point that I really want to bring up, though, is I think that Maurizio Sarri is clearly not cooking with all of the ingredients that he bought. Jorginho is a very important part of that, and we will get into him in a second, because I think the team doesn't really move as well without him. But point being that I think in a game against a bottom half of the table team like a West Ham, where we need to go score goals, I think a more dynamic midfield where you did a 4-2-3-1, brought in Pedro for maybe Kovacic or N'Golo Kante, depending on who you wanted to be the two, maybe provides you with some more dynamism. Now, obviously, Pedro isn't available today, so it's a stupid argument that I'm making against myself, but maybe that's a solution to help us break teams down more if we have more kind of willing runners. But Willian and Hazard have to be better in the spaces that they're given. I mean, Mike Ryan was right earlier. The amount of space that Willian was given for a kind of a top-notch Premier League player was almost ludicrous, and there didn't seem to be any ambition to take on players or provide any extra space for runners to come in. So I think it was just a poor offensive effort in general, and probably N'Golo Kante was the cherry on that Sunday.
All right, so we've talked a lot about the midfield, but I think you bring up a good point, Nick. We didn't talk about Jorginho yet, and you know what? As much as we talk about stats not always mattering when it comes to if we don't win, but Jorginho broke a Premier League record versus West Ham with 180 attempted passes. But I think the real question is, does that actually matter if ultimately we don't produce a result out of it? And Mike, I think it's got to be kind of pulling at the heartstrings a little bit here. You're happy with the fact that he is kind of moving the ball, continue to recycle it, played some nice balls forward this time, almost got Drew into a position to score, but at the same time, when you have all this possession, you don't do anything with it, it can be a little bit of a frustrating experience.
Oh, for sure. I got to say, hell no, I don't care about stats like this, especially when it doesn't lead to anything on the pitch. I think there's a little part of me that says, if I want to go watch somebody kick a ball and, play teacups into a wall, back and forth, I'll do something else. But we know this. Sarri defends by holding possession of the ball. And I understand that, and I get that, and that's what Jorginho's role is. I would like to start seeing us do a little bit more with 70+% of possession. 17 shots on goal. I'd like us to start seeing at least 50% of those on goal. I feel like there is at times a lot of wasted possession, and I think to today there was almost a little bit of hubris and this overconfidence of, we'll nick that goal eventually. And I don't think anybody really put it into that top gear. As far as, a little bit of what we were saying about Conte, I'm wondering if maybe it's a tactic shift. Maybe we go 2-3 at the back and maybe 4 in the midfield and let Conte, be in the center with Jorginho, maybe just to balance things out a little bit. So that, and our wings have to pass that ball faster and attack. And that we're not playing sorry ball when Willian's killing off every, when he's slowing down and downshifting and waiting for people to come out to him. You beat that press, you beat that 8-man block by whipping good crosses into the box.
Well, and I think what I observed when I was watching the match is that most of the time we were, and you made this downshifting comment just now, is that we were passing the ball and the ball was either behind the player, so someone would have to pass, move back, or it was being delivered a little too fast, so someone was getting it, but it was kind of quickly bouncing back off them and they had to kind of track back to get it a little bit. We very rarely in this match were hitting players in stride where they were able to continue taking the ball forward, which really slowed down the attack, Nick. And I don't know if you observed that as well, but it really seemed like we just weren't connected. We weren't all synced up in the way that we have seen the sorry ball or Sarissimo kind of pull off in a couple of previous matches.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. I think the thing that Chelsea is still adapting to, and it's clear that it's like when Bruce Banner is like half Hulk and he's like almost there, but he's not quite there. And like, he still see a little bit of the human side of him is Chelsea with the side to side passes. You saw the ball recycled more today in a not threatening manner than we've seen all season, because I think some players were leggy, some players just didn't have it today, and there was some of that Antonio Conte plotting approach that is still within this team that I think Maurizio Sarri will have a challenge to get rid of, just being completely frank with you guys. I think you've seen really good spurts and moments from this team about how they eventually want to play on the front foot and really up the tempo and really get the ball moving around in a way that teams just can't keep up with, and I think is even faster and more dynamic than what Liverpool or City are doing when it's all said and done. But it's not for the entire game, and I think that Jorginho was a prime offender of that today, because he had a lot of passes that just didn't look like he was as sharp as I would have expected. And there were two types that really kind of bothered me, Mike Ryan. The ones that were just kind of directly into Giroud and Morata's feet, where they were crowded out immediately and there was no real chance to have the 1-2 interchange. And then the side to side, hey, I'm just going to slowly move this along so that other people can catch up. It just didn't seem like there was a ton of fitness going into this. So that was just my thought on that.
Yeah, I don't. I think I might speak for a lot of fans when I say this. I don't know if I'm smart enough to really understand how good Jorginho is. I know he's crucial to what we do, but as a Chelsea fan who jumped aboard the Chelsea bandwagon the first Mourinho stint, I'm used to a certain identity, and I mean, shoot. 0-0 at West Ham in previous years, that might just actually be according to plan. So I think we're having a little bit of difficulty thinking that we were a certain team. And I think, I forgot who made the point, but I think it was a solid one that we've gotten a little bit lucky, maybe. We were due for this sort of result, and I think it sort of caught up with us. When it comes to Jorginho, he sort of is what he is. I understand he gets the ball quick. Lateral passes and backwards passes often don't get me really excited. I think the game sort of screamed to me Ross Barkley, just understanding how dead-legged everybody seemed. And he's had some opportunity under Sarri. By all accounts, Sarri kind of likes him and how he's responded to the style. he has a bit of selfishness to him, even though to a large degree I kind of think that he's bought into the system. But I thought that this game sort of screamed for someone being a little bit more selfish to take opportunities. And he had a really solid shot that I think Fabianski made an excellent save on. And perhaps not enough credit was being dished out to that incredible save towards the end, because there was a lot of pace on that ball. I just wish we would have seen a little bit more Ross Barkley. And I think that just speaks to the larger concern about Saudi maybe not distributing minutes as much as we'd like to some of the other players.
So
it brings up really quick, Dan. It brings up a good point, though, is if you look at the innate skill sets of Kovacic, N'Golo Kante, and Jorginho, and Dan mentioned this earlier, none of those are born goal scorers. I think Ross Barkley is kind of a mix between, what I think Kovacic is and maybe something a little bit more attacking. I don't even know if he's, what I think Ruben could eventually be, though, from an attacking standpoint. And it brings up a really good question, because then you have Cesc Fabregas and, Drinkwater's obviously not, in the picture, and you have Ruben. You have all these different options. And I think this is where Maurizio Sarri has to take a really good hard look at himself and say, if the game is just kind of, it's fine, but we're not really doing anything. Who's our game changer? Do we have one? Maybe we don't. I don't know, especially in the midfield. So is it Cesc Fabregas coming off and trying to deliver some balls over the top? Maybe. Is it Ross Barkley, who has a pretty decent shot from range? I mean, at Everton, he used to score some bangers. So maybe that's a solution. If Ruben gets healthy and can contribute in a way, maybe Ruben's the answer. But, in years past, we've had Cesc in like a super sub role, and I think there's been a different skill set that he brought to the game that could be useful. And in a game like this, where I think Jorginho is really, really important to the team, and N'Golo Kante clearly didn't have a great game, and Kovacic was by far the best of the three. Do you try and do something crazy different and just throw West Ham a look that they're not expecting? Because we're going to see the back nine more often than not this year, just due to the possession that we're going to have. So, Dan, it's my last point on the midfield, because I know we've talked about it ad nauseum, but should Maurizio Sarri think more about the different scenarios and different skill sets that he has, because it doesn't seem to me like there's just that much differentiation.
Yeah, I think that's the prime call out. And, we were going back and forth on Twitter today. I was talking to a couple of people after the match, and, the midfield obviously has been a huge point of conversation, but my ask to the individual was between Barkley, Drinkwater, Fabregas, Kovacic, Jorginho, Ruben Loftus-Cheek. What's the over/under goal total for the season in Premier League competitions? Is it double digit? Do we get to 10? Do we get to 15? So I'd love maybe Nick, then Mike Ryan. What's your between all of our midfielders this season in the Premier League? What's going to be the total goal number?
I think if this midfield, whatever configuration, does not have at least 20 goals, we are in serious trouble. And I know that sounds ridiculous coming off of this game, but I mean it's been and really since Frank left, an area that we haven't really fulfilled, and I think that it needs to be fulfilled. Whoever can deliver, and by whatever means, I don't care if it's shinned in like N'Golo Kante did in the first match against Huddersfield, or if it's some beautiful long range strike from Barkley. The goals need to come in, and I think that number has to, if we want to have the ultimate success this year, and thinking about the league or an FA Cup run or a Europa League run, that midfield's going to have to deliver.
Yeah, amen to that. But I don't have confidence that we're going to. Not the way that we've looked, even in some of those easier games where we've knocked in 3-4 goals. I'm going with I think we're going to get a max of maybe 19 goals out of a lot of them, which leaves a lot to be desired. And I think Sarri is looking very much forward to that winter transfer window, especially to bulk up in some of these needs. And as far as what you were saying with Barkley, I agree 100%. This game called for his pace and his physicality, and I almost would have liked to see him come on at the half up top for Willian. And ideally, maybe have RLC slotting in behind, or substituting for Kovacic, and just see how that works, because I think that Barkley will do it even better, being able to run more at defenses. Dan, what are your thoughts?
Well, let's get Mike Ryan's goal total here for the midfielders, and then I'll drop a little last thought at the end.
Mike, you're passing like Jorginho over here.
I know, man.
You're missing them all over the place.
I think 20 goals is, as presently constituted, is a bit aggressive, but there are so many goals there to be had. We've seen the opportunities that you'd anticipate, whether it's RLC or a winter window transfer. You'd like to think that someone's going to put these away, but I'm just looking at the players that are out there right now, and I just don't see how Jorginho and Conte can do it. Kovacic, I think when he was brought in on loan, he was the guy in the midfield that we were pointing to, anticipating a Conte, Jorginho, Kovacic midfield. That's the dude that's going to be getting the goals. He's so hungry for an opportunity, both internationally and on his club. Like, he's just dying to have these opportunities that Sarri Ball will present to him. And even though I think he's been pretty good in the system, I'm a little disappointed that he isn't the one scoring the goal. I think we were probably being a little too hyperbolic when we saw Conte shin one in against Huddersfield. Goal-scoring Conte. He's never been that kind of player. It's hard for me to assume that he might finish, with 8 or 9 goals. I just don't see it. So my hope is that the answer is on this team. But as far as to get to that 20 goal number, that I think is hugely important for this team to reach. But I don't think the answer is in our present starting 11.
If you add in Alonso, we're getting closer.
No, we're not. We're not doing that. He is a defender. He is a defender. He is not a striker. He is not a midfielder. He is technically a defender.
Keep telling yourself that. I don't think he thinks of himself that way.
He might not. Fantasy Premier League does not. So I will continue to list him that way. I think 15 or under is probably the realistic total. We talk about Barkley, and we'll kind of transition out of it at this point. Barkley has never scored more than 8 goals in a Premier League season. 12 was his maximum at any point in his career at Everton. So I think even if he does play, it's kind of like the Willian, kind of potentially scratcher kind of situation, like your punch card. Eventually you're going to get an opportunity for him to get a goal, but don't count on it, and don't tie your wagon to it or hitch your wagon to it. Ultimately, that's kind of going to be a unfulfilled prophecy there. So I think Mike made reference to a January window or even a next summer window, but it's going to be about some level of personnel change in the future to really help, do what Liverpool and City have done over the past couple windows, which is construct a team capable of dominating on both sides of the ball. But we have a couple of last thoughts, some quick takes here. Your boy Nicholas Rudiger left the game injured. Called for the substitution. What are you thinking?
Yeah, hopefully it was more preventative than anything. I mean, one of my favorite things that's ever happened on TV, and I'm sure Mike Ryan identifies with this all the time, is the announcer says we don't want to speculate on an injury, but it was definitely a groin, and you're like, well, then you just did the thing that you didn't want to do. But it certainly did look like a groin, at least from where he was holding it after. So it would be a blow if he can't come back for Liverpool. It would certainly, I think, temper expectations, because he's our best defender at the moment, I would say, and a guy who has matched up favorably with Mo Salah and co in the past. So if he's not able to go, Mike Ryan, what are you thinking for Liverpool?
Oh, we're totally fine. Did you not pay attention to what happened today? Skelly Gowie is back.
Yes.
Skelly Gowie. So we're totally fine. Who needs Rudiger when Cahill is playing Saudi ball and displaying with his passing exactly why he shouldn't be playing in this system? This is if Rudiger's gone for any sort of extended period of time, especially with David Luiz out there, because Rudiger a couple times today I felt sort of made up for some David Luiz mistakes. This could be potentially a really difficult part of the schedule for Chelsea. I think we all agree, we're not breaking any news here when we say that with Luiz back there, we've sort of dodged some bullets, to put it nicely.
Breaking news, Mike.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that's been because Rudiger has picked up the proverbial slack. So to see him gone for any sort of fixture is going to be really difficult. And I fear that if he is missing games, any sort of top of the table shout and scoreboard watching when it comes to Liverpool and Man City might go out the window, and you start just holding on to try to make top four again.
I think you're going to potentially see, Christensen obviously played really solid game in Europe this past week here too. So we'll probably see him and Luiz in some level of partnership if the Rudiger injury truly is an issue. I mean, Christensen probably was not an option just for how much he had played and how little Gary had played. So again, fresh leg situation. But that probably would then also allow you to see Luiz being able to play a little more swashbuckling, which is both wonderful and scary of a proposition. It feels like taking a shot of something you don't know what it was ordered and hoping for the best. And also it means potentially more opportunities to see land speed records being broken when he makes a slide tackle attempt. I thought Cesc Fabregas held the record previously, but I think David Luiz might have broken it today for his one challenge, which I was most assured that it was probably going to be ankles being crushed by his kind of timing there. But we didn't see it happen.
It did look like the Geico commercial from the World Cup this summer, where the guy's just sliding around, and you're like, man, that was a sharp commercial, but you don't want to see a Chelsea player doing that typically. So, it's going to be rough, man. And it's an area too where, I think that we all kind of realize that, Ampadu is still really young, but, if he just seems like he's kind of the next, great young player that's going to come through Chelsea and actually play minutes. It could be an opportunity on Wednesday, especially to blood him early, and if he plays well, then maybe you start him against the real side.
I'm not loving how hard you guys bet on the center backs. I do think there are some things to be desired, but I thought Gary did well stepping in, didn't give up anything. And when it comes to Liverpool, we're going to have regardless of Rudiger or not. So I think we're going to go strong. I think we're going to go strong on Wednesday. I don't think we're going to be able to compete come the weekend.
Well, before we get all sour and dour, let's go through a quick man in the match poll. And you know what? There were only 3 options this week. It was Antonio Rudiger, who played, I think, a very good game. Also kind of did a nice job defensively. 45% of the vote. Yarmolenko ends up with 13%.
Jeez, how do you miss that header?
Too low.
My God.
Yeah, we need a sports science episode on that, and that would probably explain it for us, Nick. And then 42%, the I prefer not to speak emoji, the one that has the zipped lips, came in second place. So thank you all for your participation. And, no one was really upset this week about it. A couple people did say Fabianski, who would probably actually be the truest one because he made probably the best save of the game. Just put the nose right to it and kept West Ham, got them a point, which is going to be very important as they look to climb the table out of the relegation zone. But as it stands, Liverpool were the only team to go a perfect 6 for 6. Man City and Chelsea both at 16 points. Manchester City ahead on goal difference right now, so we drop to third place. Watford continuing their amazing run to push Tottenham and Arsenal and Manchester United in the 5th, 6th, and 7th spots. Bournemouth, Nick, continuing their trend downward at this point, trying to hopefully make your dream come true of their relegation as you predicted in the future.
Not my dream come true. For all the Bournemouth fans who regularly listen to this show, that it's not my dream. I like Eddie Howe. I just didn't think he'd have the juice. I think you're going to be just fine, though. I've seen Cardiff City play. They're not going to stay up this year, so it's pretty brutal.
Yeah, they are actually mathematically relegated as of this point. All right, but that is going to be this first episode of the week. And before we get out of here, we want to thank Mike Ryan for giving us a little time and joining us for his first episode. Thank you, Mike. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you guys. Honor and a pleasure. And I just so happen to be traveling to the UK for the Boxing Day fixtures and for the new year. So hopefully we can link up when I'm out there.
Let's do it.
And Mike, where should people look for you? Where should they go find you if they don't? I mean, you have almost like hundreds of thousands of followers, and you're more popular than an Instagram model. But where should they find you at?
They can listen to us on ESPN Radio and watch us on ESPN News. The Dan Le Batard Show with Stugatz weekdays, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and follow me for Irrational Chelsea and Cleveland Browns tweets at Michael Ryan Ruiz on Twitter.
Awesome. Well, hey, last final thoughts, Mike. Anything?
Yeah, London trip. I actually paid to go on this last year. It was beyond expectation. So it's one thing to have somebody talking about it, but to have gone on it myself, caught 2 matches at the Bridge, it was definitely a trip of a lifetime. So I really, really encourage you checking that out. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, and I'll be there. So
Nicholas.
I mean, what more do you need?
People just unsubscribe from the trip.
Hey,
that's great.
We either just gained a bunch of people or lost a bunch of people. I'm not sure which.
Mike, I think, or Nick, I think you remember Parks and Recreation, and they did the telethon episode.
Yeah.
And when Nick Offerman as Ron Swanson starts caning the chair, and they start losing money.
It's the best. The
That's
scroller just keeps. It was beautiful. Yeah. So yeah, to be compared to Nick Offerman's obviously a dream, and I'm really happy about that. But yeah, just everyone stay positive. We are fine. Even if we get blown out by Liverpool, we're good. And just keep the faith that Maurizio Sarri is going to get this right after a couple of months and make sure the configuration is right, and all of the things that we're talking about will be but a distant memory, Dan.
I believe that to be the case. Again, 16 from 18, limited preseason, not necessarily getting all the targets that we needed. Personnel needs to be potentially shifted a little bit, and this was much better than Sarri's start with Napoli. So keeping all that in mind, still plenty to be positive about. You should still go about enjoying your week. And maybe next week might be a little sadder, but that's okay. We got you coming with another episode to keep you happy for a little bit longer. But until then, friends, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high. We miss you, Brandon.